If you're a vegan out there and you think you can't gain muscle and be strong, check out today's guest, Dr. Nick Delgado. He is going to show you things that you have never seen before. There he is. That's Dr. Nick. Look at him. That's the world record for curls, breaking all the... Look at that. And that's a vegan, everybody. Check that out. Alrighty.
This is the Raw Life Health Show. Raw Life.
Hello everybody, it's Paul Neese with the Raw Life Health Show, and I am here at this expo. We have my friend Dr. Nick Delgado, and he is doing dry blood cell analysis, but even more important than that, he's an amazing nutritionist, and he's going to be on the show today talking about things that you never heard of. And you talk about fitness being important for health, this man will show you and tell you things that have never been done before, but he's done it. So here he is, let's meet him now, we'll get him more later.
I'm excited to be on the show. You know, one of the things, my goal is to educate people about the possibility of the impossibility. And I know that if you just condition the mind, you get in the right mind state, you learn how to exercise properly under cool conditions, utilizing altitude conditioning, utilizing the state-of-the-art supplements and nutrition and raw food, you can do things you can't imagine. And I'm 57 years old, broke the world record for curls last year. In 2007, I hold the world record for hammer curl press overhead. I compete against guys, athletes half my age on steroids, and I beat them. I'll tell you how we do it.
And you're a vegan?
I'm vegan for 30 years. 30 years I avoid meat, I never buy it, I never use fish, chicken, eggs, dairy products. I get all my proteins from raw yams, sweet potatoes, whole fresh fruits and vegetables. It's the way to go. I tell you, it'll clean up your blood, clean up your cellular health, and give you energy you can't believe.
We're looking forward to having you on the show.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Hello everybody, so here we are with Nick Delgado. Nick is, I mean, he's on a vegan diet, everybody. The world's strongest vegan. Forget about vegan, one of the world's strongest men. And he just has great information. So here, welcome to the show, Nick Delgado. Nick, say hello to the Raw Life Health Show.
It's great to be on with this show today.
Great. Nick, well, right off the bat, I just got to say that it's an inspiration. I've seen your stuff, and I recommend everyone get to YouTube or your website to see your amazing stuff. But first, I want to know what inspired you to start eating healthier, eat a vegan diet, and lead up to where you are now.
Well, as a high school athlete, I always believed that so long as I ate sufficient amounts of protein, that I would accomplish most of my athletic goals. Unfortunately, along with a high protein diet, typically there's quite a bit of fat. I avoided sugars. I avoided salts, but in my high school years, I was one of the only athletes that had hypertension, obviously known as high blood pressure, and so they put me on medications. It was that bad, and I was concerned. But I thought, well, the blood pressure medications, the doctor knows best, and you know, maybe this is going to work out okay. I wasn't overweight. I was in superb shape because I was running, playing football, playing baseball. You know, I was fairly good high school athlete. And yet, after my senior year, when I graduated and went on to USC, the University of Southern California, during one weekend, I was playing in the Turkey Bowl against police officers, and we formed a team together with some guys. And I had a small stroke at halftime. I had a TIA. I fell to the ground. I was paralyzed, and it was terrifying. I thought, my gosh, what happened? And I did recover, but I realized that this use of blood pressure medication wasn't helping the situation. Later, I read a book by Dr. Cleves Bennett who showed that although hypertensive medications lower the blood pressure, they don't get to the cause of the problem, and in many cases, they accelerate the rate of atherosclerosis or clogged arteries. Well, that led me to a book called Live Longer Now by Nathan Pritikin. I read the book. I was engrossed in it. I thought, how come no one else knew what Nathan Pritikin was talking about in terms of lifestyle and diet and fitness management to control most of the chronic diseases. Particularly, he addressed diabetes, heart disease, obesity. So I started on the program right away. Just, I was a nutritionist at the time. I was in physical therapy school, and I adapted all the principles. I tried it out, and in 6 months, although I had gained weight after my senior year, I wasn't in athletics when I went to college, and I gained a lot of weight because genetically I tend to retain weight easily, and eating high protein, high fat foods it was just quick that I gained it. And plus, I wanted to gain weight because I was trying to play football, and I thought I could play at the college level. And I'm only 5'8", so at 210 pounds, I was just too heavy. And so all that being said, I got down to an ideal weight within 6 months. I later actually met Nathan Pritikin at a health conference, and I watched him for 6 hours explain to the audience a rather amazing talk that I never forgot to this day. And he invited me, after I met with him, to come work with him at the Pritikin Longevity Center, which was the opportunity of a lifetime. I was, at that time, just in my early 20s. So I spent the next 4 years working with Nathan Pritikin at the Pritikin Longevity Center and researching health and nutrition and lifestyle factors. Then I went back to Loma Linda University, and I furthered my studies. And then I started working with Tony Robbins of Master University. I also started training later with some of the hormone experts on a bioidentical, natural, plant-derived hormonal therapy. And I began some of the great fitness stars, such as Dragan Radovich, to compete against him in the World Strength Endurance Championships. So it's been quite an odyssey, and I want to be a role inspiration to people at age 57. I'm still training hard. Last year, I broke the world record for curls. I curled with 50-pound barbell. I curled 1,048 curls in 1 hour, which broke the Guinness World Record, which was prior 550 curls by Stuart Burrell. And then a guy out of Ireland broke that record, except I still have him beat by 500 pounds. He did more reps, but he used only 22 kilos, which is 48 pounds. So I'm the current world strength endurance champion in 2 different events. Another one, a hammer curl press overhead, where I lifted 50,500 pounds in 1 hour. So I love to train hard and intense. It fits my vegan lifestyle. I had to adopt my vegan lifestyle to get the food density to train hard and to recover. So, that's a big start off in a nutshell, what got me motivated to get started in my direction.
Great. Now, one of the most, or probably the most dramatic thing you did with your diet, would you say, is you switched to a vegan diet. Would you say that was the most dramatic change you made at that point?
Well, initially, I was focusing based on the Pritikin suggestions to go on a low-fat diet. So I was still on fish, chicken, and turkey for the first year while I eliminated all cheeses and butters and oils and fats. And I went to basically, brown rice and whole grains. At the end of a year, I got in great shape, but for some reason my cholesterol wouldn't come down and my blood pressure would kind of oscillate. So it caused me to make the next decision, which in review of the literature and talking with Nathan Pritikin, we had established what we called the Pritikin regression diet, which was a more advanced, maybe the general public wasn't quite ready for it at the time, but instead of having the lean meats, I cut out all the lean meats. And I got to tell you, as a training athlete, I was concerned I was going to lose my muscle density. The moment I gave up the non-fat cottage cheese and the fish, the chicken, the egg whites. But to my surprise, and as I later reviewed the literature, I not only did I not lose muscle density, I really actually improved in my athletic profile.
Well, I want to talk a little about that because so many vegans today always ask the question, where do you get your protein? But before we talk about that, tell us about Pritikin a little because I'm sure back then he was probably not a young man, and so I don't need. Tell us a little about. You say he promoted this low-fat diet, and how healthy was he personally? And I assume he's no longer alive today because he sounds like he was up in age back then. Is that correct?
That's correct. Nathan Pritikin was a great inspiration to me. He was one of the great researchers in health and nutrition. He actually already had 14 patents in engineering, chemistry, and he was quite an ingenious scientist. So he had kind of a methodical way of approaching studies and research as a background as an engineer. And so he applied that same kind of methodical science to teasing out the data and trying to figure out, was it high fiber in the diet? Was it low fat? Was it the phytochemicals, the super nutrients? What was it about the nutritional diet that he was recommending? and or continue to develop and evolve that would help people to reverse many of the chronic diseases. What people don't know was that early on he had a thyroid condition, and they chose to do radiation therapy and knock out his thyroid at that time. And shortly after that, he developed hairy cell leukemia, which many people don't survive very long. He actually lived a full 20 years past that diagnosis, and I believe in big part due to the fact that he was on a healthier diet as opposed to his early Western diet that caused him to have severe coronary heart disease, which was his primary concern. But the secondary concern that he had never talked about was the leukemia. He was very, very energetic. I mean, I remember him running up the stairs and, going for jogs with him every night. I mean, he was like a father to me. I mean, he was approaching 70 and I was only 23. And he just really took me under his wing and taught me everything about research and science. We had big conferences at the time, longevity conferences, and we brought in some of the top scientists from all over the world. So I really was immersed in probably the greatest anti-aging health progressive university that you could ever imagine. Since, I guess I have a passion for research and study and learning. And, I think with knowledge, you gain power and a method and a way to help not just yourself, but other people.
Definitely. And I want to encourage everybody to get to your website, which we'll give out here in a moment. But before we do that, I just want to let people know, you've already mentioned the amazing physical feats you've accomplished on a vegan diet. Now, you're not necessarily on an all raw food diet, even though you recommend a good percentage of raw food in a diet. But there's two things that I find interesting about your research and what you do. One of them is, if I'm correct, you're not a big promoter of consuming a lot of grains. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, although I consume grains, it's more for practicality, say at a restaurant on the go. I'll prefer to order brown rice when I go to an Asian restaurant. I'll order Thai food with multiple vegetables that are, I ask them to not add oils to the foods. Generally, Thai food and Vietnamese food are made with less added fats and oils. I do believe in healthy fats, which are, from soaked nuts and seeds, almonds, avocado, the various olives and all the good sources of whole food healthy fats. I believe in super complex carbohydrate foods, which would include.
That's what we're going to get to, because not to interrupt you, because that's your, I don't want to say your secret, but it's something you consider one of the highest sources of protein that you consume, that the average person might consume it and not realize what an important food this is. So that's what I wanted to talk to you, and I want a little surprise factor there, and you were just about to mention it, I think. So tell everybody, Dr. Nick, because here you are a vegan with a tremendously fit lifestyle. You could probably just as strong as just about any meat eater out there, if not stronger. And your main source of protein is, go ahead, tell everybody what it is.
Well, unlike people who believe you have to add egg whites, chicken, fish, turkey, or even combine beans and rice to get a complete protein, even Frances Moore Lepay, in her book, Diet for a Small Planet, in her first edition, she claimed you had to combine beans and rice to get a complete protein or similar other combinations, leaving people to believe that something about plant foods are incomplete in their amino acid breakdown. When you read the book Reversing Diabetes by Julian Whitaker, he's got a nice chart and graph, and also by John McDougall in McDougall's Medicine and in some of his follow-up books. They present some very good research. One of my books, published, Grow Young and Slim, really just shatters that myth. The reality is that, for example, sweet potatoes, I consider to be one of the most awesome sources of protein, and even though it only has 3% of its calories in protein, 3% fat, and 96% complex carbohydrate, I often times take sweet potatoes and I put them in my blender. I put them in a Vitamix, or I have a travel blender. And at the same time, I use an omega juicer, and I juice massive amounts of greens that I've just really incorporated more recently. I have to tell you, I was really very much into only blending, but I'm okay with juicing and using that as the liquid to allow the blending of the beets, the yams, the soaked nuts and seeds. And so I make this super drink where I add in a few other powders that I've created, a slim blend with 52 other whole fruits and vegetables kept under 118 degrees. So I really do eat, at least by percentage of calories, a very high percentage of raw food. My goal is to approach somewhere over 80% raw food. And as I mentioned, I do eat some cooked food, and yet a vast majority of it from early in the morning, this big super drink that I consume, which is primarily my full breakfast. It's about 48 ounces to 60 ounces, the full pitcher size of a Vitamix. That's what I consume for breakfast. Then I transition to very large raw vegetable salads. I think that in primitive times, we had access to the rainforest, and we probably, like some of our primate friends, like such as the bonobos monkeys, which are a 94.6 genetic match to the human genetics. They stand upright, they eat large quantities of food. But even in the African cultures and some of the nations where Dr. Burkett investigated, they would eat very large quantities of raw, tuberous, fibrous foods to get all the nutrients and phytochemicals and the caloric density they needed. And that's why we have a 32 feet length of intestine. So I get all my protein from the equivalent of, say, sweet potatoes and the combination of various vegetable plant foods. And I have to tell you, when you review the studies by Dr. Lee and Dr. Reddy, we see that in humans, the nitrogenous absorption, that is being in positive nitrogen balance, is more than adequate, in fact, superior. I'll go on record as saying superior to the protein composition of eggs, meat, or cheese, which has only been proven to be adequate for rats, which are carnivores. And all the studies done on animals were done on rats by Osborne and Mendel and published in actual nutrition textbooks. And it's really misleading. I believe there's an agenda by the four food groups to make you believe that plant foods are incomplete and inferior. And I find that scientifically to be incorrect.
Well, you have so much knowledge, and you and I both know that there are a lot of people who eat a vegan diet that are healthy, but there are a lot of people that eat a vegan diet who are not healthy. And we can explain it by saying, well, they're not eating a vegan diet the correct way. Somebody could eat noodles all day and call themselves a vegan. On the other hand, there are a lot of people out there that eat meat and animal-based products that are unhealthy, but there are people that eat meat and animal products that some people are healthy. So do you think it's one diet for everyone, or you think there's so many other factors that determine it? What do you think?
You know, Paul, I think the definition of health has to be expanded beyond how someone looks or how they feel. For the last 30 years, I've employed the most advanced clinical data collection material, all the way from carotid artery scans, where I take a probe and I examine these meat eaters who are eating fish and chicken and telling me they're healthy, but then I find plaques in their carotid arteries. Now, you have to understand, a carotid artery is about the size of your finger, the little finger, and if there's a blockage building up, plaques from animal product build up with no forewarning. There's no nerve endings inside the arteries. So if you build up, say, 10% in the carotid artery in the neck, then that 10%, if you translate to the coronary artery, which is about the size of the blood vessels on the back of your hand, those little blood vessels could have up to 40 to 60% narrowing of atherosclerosis. And you realize that the number one killer today of both men and women is still heart attack and stroke. And with cancer coming up fairly quickly now in the incidence, and obviously diabetes is now 1 in 2, and the diabetics tend to have the highest rate of stroke and heart attack. And diabetes is a whole nother story. It has nothing to do with sugar intake as much as it does oils and fats, and to stabilize one's body with complex fibrous foods to reduce the insulin insensitivity by reducing the oils and fats, not the sugar, although I recommend people don't use white sugar, obviously. But, with the high fiber, high complex carbohydrate, low fat, the best study done on the New Guinea natives, which eats primarily sweet potatoes and their leaves. Paul, here's a good example of a group of people who are very muscular, they're fit, their arteries are very clean based on autopsy. Now, you have to understand, Dr. Barnes did a study on 22,000 people in which, after death, he autopsied them from 7 different nations around the world, they expanded that to 10-nation study with follow-up studies, and they eventually found that a person, no exception, culture that consumed fish, chicken, eggs, or meat, any kind of animal product, did have a degree, if not severe amount, of atherosclerosis. Those cultures that ate a plant-based diet, no clogging of the arteries, clean arteries. The New Guinea natives, when that study was done, 773 people were examined. Their arteries were completely clean, no signs of diabetes. The only person that had atherosclerosis in their arteries and had diabetes was from the American expedition, who was eating the American Western food.
Wow, amazing. Now, tell us, when you talk about eating a sweet potato, you're not only talking about blending it up and putting it in this drink, you also talk about you cook sweet potatoes as well, correct?
Yeah, I do. Sometimes cooking it breaks down some of the food substance to make it a little bit more calorically available. Obviously, eating more raw food reduces the caloric absorption, particularly because fiber itself is non-digestible. And like in the case of, say, beans, when you cook beans, it makes them more bioavailable, more digestible. I think that, we just have to, step back and look at the longest-lived cultures and probably assume that, a plant-based diet might extend to, although fire probably came into the human history a little later in time. Again, I think wherever you can go raw, you're best off. But some cooked food is a little bit satisfying, nutritious, from a standpoint of it doesn't destroy all the nutrients. In the case of, say, mushrooms, there's some very important medicinal mushroom properties of beta-glucans that even if you cook mushrooms, you're going to get the quality of protection and release of your own body stem cells based on maitake mushroom studies, releasing additional stem cells that heal broken down tissue throughout your body.
Sure. How many, just out of curiosity, how many sweet potatoes would you say you consume in a week?
It's interesting, Paul. You met me in person, and remember, I'll tell you, my genetics are that I tend to gain weight fairly easily, and my brother, without getting into detail, he tends to kind of stay on the Western American diet, and he's very, very heavy. I mean, he's got the same genetics I do. My other brother stays mostly raw and fresh and, blending. He follows my kind of dietary pattern, but genetically, he's very thin. He's, I guess you would call the runt of the family. When you see a litter born, some of them are just genetically going to be skinnier and thin. I'm kind of the genetics where I gain muscle and fat very easily. So, I personally actually eat more white potatoes, surprisingly. A lot of russet and golden and red rose potatoes, because calorically the density of potatoes is much lower than sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are very heavy. So if my weight is a little bit high, I'll eat mostly vegetables, soup, salads, and potatoes. And that's what I did leading up to my last world record. I was ripped. I was so muscular. When you see pictures of me, it's just, it even surprises me. I don't, it's fun to get, not just a 6-pack, but an 8-pack. And I don't use these diuretics and drugs that bodybuilders use to get a, 6-pack to be on television and show off and act like their exercise equipment got them the 6-pack. But I will tell you, when my weight is down, and there are times that I've dropped too much weight from excessive, training and or travel or just missing some meals, quite frankly, I load up on the sweet potatoes. I'll eat somewhere between 3 and 4 sweet potatoes a day, along with, some of the large quantities of blended drinks. I probably consume somewhere between 4 to 6 pounds of raw vegetable substance a day.
And we have to make it clear, you're not doing what the average person does when they eat a potato, and that's put a whole bunch of butter and a bunch of other junk on it. You're just eating the potato with your vegetables and so on. Now,
chili salsa. I usually use raw chili salsa. Chilies are really good, in my opinion. Peppers, in other countries, they have the least incidence of colds and flus. It seems to stimulate the alveoli in the lungs, to prevent colds and flus, and also just sustaining cortisol levels by being outdoor in the daylight. I was just outdoors with my 3-year-old. I have 5 children, ages 3 and a half all the way up to 33. My 33-year-old will be 34 in November, so excuse me, in August. So it's you know, it's I'm a proud dad, and I like to live by example. My 19-year-old is an MMA fighter. He's a big 220-pound, 5'11" on his mom's side. You know, big genetics, and you know, when he's cutting up and wanting to get in shape, he's eating potatoes, vegetables, rice, fruit, yams. I mean, you know, the whole thing.
Now, when you eat the potatoes, are you eating the skins as well, or no?
You know, potatoes are part of the nightshade family. So underneath the skin, if they're a little green, it could be that the potato grew too close up to the ground, to the sun, and it concentrated in a substance called solanin. And you need to peel those and take the eyes out of those particular potatoes, simply because the concentration of solanin could be a little bit hard on the liver. So I usually peel them if in doubt. Sometimes I don't, you know, if they look to be, you know, there's no green color to them. So that's kind of my rule of thumb.
What about the high starch content of the white potatoes? I mean, what would you say to that?
You know, keep in mind that probably in primitive times, once again, we in the taste buds can seek sugar, which comes from, in the case of starch, 1,000 glucose molecules all bound together, and they break down gradually, first in the saliva, and then of course the stomach has stomach acids, but by the time they get to the intestines and the pancreas squirts its digestive juices, amylase and so forth, throughout as the food passes by, you basically are breaking down these complex superfood starches into glucose molecules that the brain must have sufficient glucose to be sustained. Although I'm an advocate of juicing fasting, I caution people beyond a certain point, because when you're without glucose after 12 hours, your body's going to take calories, not from your body fat. It will sacrifice your own lean body mass. And as you get older, you should not be sacrificing organ or muscle tissue in the event that, you know, I understand, again, fasting's good for detoxifying, maybe if you've been on a heavy diet, or if you have arthritis and you're trying to figure out what foods you're incompatible with, and you then add back in single foods to find out what it is you're having a problem with in regards to challenge tests. But I eat frequent amounts, sustain my blood sugar level. I work out intensely. I take in massive amounts of fluids, and I use a lot of hydrogen water also. Out of Japan, there's a new technology where we put these little hydrogen sticks, and it makes the water more bioavailable. There's some beliefs about cluster water and different discussions, but you can take filtered water from reverse osmosis, which you really need to do with Fukushima and the exposure to radiation and particles in our water and our food supply and air, and then add these hydrogen sticks, which will increase the hydrogen content of the water, which basically gives you super strength as an athlete. I basically do this for various reasons, but also it's believed to repair DNA damage, which I suspect the number of cancers that are going to be hitting the West Coast will be at an all-time high, probably in the next 5 to 15 years. I mean, these particles that are coming in from Fukushima, you know, the whole Pacific Ocean is infected. The fish, it's showing up in their gills, cesium and radioactive iodine. You know, the number of people eating sushi and things, it's going to be a pretty sorry state.
Okay, do you recommend people take protein powder or supplements like this?
You know, I tell people no way to weigh. I tell them to repeat it in my audiences, no way to weigh. I think the dairy product whey derivative is highly allergic producing. It doesn't show up immediately. It's what's called an IgG reaction, meaning that if you say, for example, an IgE reaction, you ate, say,
yeah. I'm sorry, I meant a vegan protein powder or vegan-based, because there's a bunch of vegan protein powders out there now.
Yeah.
So,
I'm leading up to it. I tend to loop
okay.
around.
Okay,
questions.
so no whey at all, and whey is
No
terrible.
way.
Continue.
So what I did is I was discouraged by the number of people who thought they had to add protein to their diet. So I came up with an all-organic hemp, brown rice, sweet potato with beet and kale with the very high nitrite for the nitric oxide conversion. So I did create a product that per scoop delivers about 11 grams of protein in the effort to transition people from what I think to be the dangers of highly inflammatory causing protein powders that everyone's using. A number of my athletes I've transitioned to this Protein Plus product that I've created. They're seeing good results. Their inflammatory rates reduced. Their joints, their arthritis problems tends to disappear. It's okay. I mean, if someone thinks they need to add some protein to their diet, particularly if they're taking in lower calories, let's say for some reason they're above their ideal body weight and they're at, say, 1,000 or 1,200 calories, then sprinkle in an extra 11 grams of protein, so long as you're within a range of about 40 to 60 grams of protein a day. I don't buy into this 1 gram of protein per kilo or 1 pound per 1 pound of weight. It's excessive. You don't need that much protein.
Now, do you personally partake in this protein powder, or do you get everything you need from the food?
I use probably 3 times a week a scoop of the protein powder on the days that I'm going principally on vegetables and soups and salads, on the days that I'm hovering in the, say, under 1,500 calorie days. On the days that I'm taking in approaching 3,000 calories, where I'm getting large amount of food substances, I don't add the protein powder. I don't need it because I'm already getting at least 60 grams in there, maybe even 60 to 70. I know that Mike Menser, which he was a former Mr. Universe, one of the only bodybuilders to score a perfect 300. He often said that you don't need more than 50 or 60 grams of protein. In fact, the average man, if you can appreciate this statistic, has 125 pounds of skeletal muscle in his body. Wait, let me correct that. The average man who weighs 150 pounds has 25 pounds of skeletal muscle density, forgetting the bone and the fat and the rest of the fluid of the body. If a bodybuilder wants to double his muscle weight from 25 to 50 pounds, to double his lean muscle mass in a year, which is a phenomenal accomplishment. I think only a few people like Chris Dickerson, Dorian Yates, some of the people in history, Mike Menser, were able to do that. Of course, they were enhanced by hormones, but I will tell you that you only need to add an extra 10 grams of protein a day to double your lean muscle mass, and equate that if you figure out the calculation of added muscle density.
Wow. Well, not for competitive bodybuilders, but please talk about, because so many people neglect this when they switch to a healthy diet, the importance of fitness and making sure they do some type of exercise and movement on a regular basis, because it's too neglected in this health field.
You know, for years I depended on my diet, and I made the excuse that so long as I was in a good diet, because I'm kind of a workaholic and working long hours, I kind of excused myself from working out. But there was a stage somewhere more than 15 years ago. You know, I just looked at myself and I said, look, this isn't right. I need to start working out. I need to train. I used to love to lift weights and train and run. And so I'm not much of a jogger. I'm more of a sprinter and a lifter. And I actively participate in a variety of, all the way from, I've incorporated yoga into my regime. I've got to tell you, I was one of these guys that felt that yoga was a little bit wimpy type of a sport and didn't even consider it a sport. And it's challenging to various muscle groups. It definitely strengthens the weaker muscle groups, the core. And for me to have a strong core and then train competitively with heavy weights, I say medium weights. Let's refine that. Medium to light weights, and I lift nonstop in repetitions and pyramid fashion. So I like to get my heart rate up, at least 130 to 180 beats a minute for at least upward to an hour. And then I incorporate my stretching and Pilates type yoga moves that also Peter Gaskew, if you read a few of his books, I use a lot of that. I have like a little web link that I can send people. It's 31 exercises to do in 30 minutes to have a pain-free body, leading all the way up to my world champion hammer curl press. And I can show anyone in whatever stage they're in to start following an easy, simple exercise program and do it on a trampoline or a whole body vibration while you do your lifts and while you do your stretches, because you need that bounce, you need that lymphatics. I incorporate multiple disciplines to make my body, to help me to accomplish my number one goal, which now is beyond breaking world strength endurance records. It's to be the oldest lived man in history. That is my goal.
Well, you've been an amazing guest here, and I want everyone to see more of your information. Please give us your website, how people can get in touch with you and just see all of your wonderful resources.
Okay, Nick, N-I-C-K, Delgado, DELGADO.com. Also, we've set up a website called estroblock.com from all the toxic estrogens and xenoestrogens. Take a look at that, estroblock.com. I have a simpler website that's going to transfer over to the other site, just called nickphd.com. And they can certainly just give us a call. We're here in Southern California in Orange County. And I'd be happy to, if someone wants to drop me an email or get one of my CDs from, we upload a lot of talks to YouTube. So you can go to YouTube and just type in Nick space Delgado, and you'll see a lot of over 110 different videos I've uploaded just in the last year.
Well, what's your phone number if people want to call you?
People can call us at our phone number over here in Southern California at 949 720-1554. 949-720-1554.
Great. And you mentioned a PhD. Are you a PhD?
Yes. I did my undergraduate work at USC in physical therapy, and then I transferred into psychology. I finished my BA degree. I got into physical therapy school, a master's leading to my work there. I transferred then to health science at Loma Linda University in a doctoral program. And then instead of completing that, I had the opportunity of a lifetime to work with the Pritikin Institute and become the director of the outpatient programs. And then I went back years later and finished basically a complementary degree in health science to do my PhD. And I did a lot of research in all the extensions of complementary medicine.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for taking out the time of your busy schedule and being a guest. And I want to recommend everyone listening right now to get to the website of Nick Delgado. And Nick, thank you so much again for joining us. It was great.
Thanks for the opportunity, Paul. Be fit, be happy, be healthy, and practice some good meditation and prayer. Put it all together and say some kind words to people. And, you know, life is much better than you could ever imagine when you're healthy.
Great. There he is. That's Dr. Nick. Look at him. That's the world record for curls, breaking all the... Look at that. 1,000?
There I did 1,994 lifts in 1 hour. If you count
1,900.
Yeah, every time my arm went up, that was a count. I had 3 judges monitoring me, and she's monitoring my heart rate at 196 beats per minute on average. He's keeping my body cool. They're changing ice towels on my feet. He's feeding me water. When I was breathing so heavy, I couldn't take in enough fluid. I dropped 8 pounds of water during the
How long did it take you?
It took us, well, it was a solid hour. It was a timed competition.
That was the Guinness Book of World Record?
Well, it's a world record because this lift is not acknowledged in Guinness, but this last year I went for the world record for curls, which is in the Guinness, and I broke it by 500 pounds.
Great. And you're only, how old?
I'm 57 now.
How old were you there?
53.
And that's a vegan, everybody. Check that out. All righty.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show. Raw Life, brighten up your life.